once we finish talking about, because we did 4 earlier chats before this as a
Mm,
prelude for ourselves, 4 chats discussing each chapter of Hegemony and Socialist Strategy.
mm.
And do they directly reference the universal subject? I'm not sure. They might, but basically, their definition of it is the attempt of classical Marxism to define the revolutionary subject as determined by class,
Mhm.
and because, to situate it today, the 1% and the 99% is a synthesized class cleavage that denotes the disgustingly rich and the literally everybody else. Um, it's close enough to universal, so it's
Oh,
the
okay. So
universal subject.
it's an attempt to articulate the. Oh, well, I guess in that regard, they're articulating the 99% in this case are the universal subject as you said, as close to as possible. So yeah, I guess in regards to Marxist philosophy, then it's denoted or articulated through class consciousness, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, hmm,
Um,
um,
the issue, I guess, the tension. Why this is an interesting
hmm,
conversation to have is that. Um, so in Doug Lane's video, again, I don't think he directly says we need a universal subject, but while I was watching it almost
hmm,
a year ago, it really resonated with me in terms of, oh no, this is a statement, like, in terms of, yes, we can create a universal subject. It doesn't need to be a classical Marxist one. It doesn't need to be authoritarian in terms of um, what you have to be part of it. Because obviously, remember the isolationism of the proletariat that was like the sort of demanded of the working class.
hmm.
If you want to be part of this movement, you've got to be tick all these boxes.
Sure.
Um, so it, Laclau Mouffe counter that with, listen, you can't you can't just predetermine what the revolutionary subject is. The revolutionary subject um, will arrive through, like, Gramsci's organic crisis. There's no telling what what sort of gives way, that induces a section of the public that bursts forward and becomes
Hmm,
hegemonic in an anti an anti status quo movement,
hmm,
or what the revolutionary subject. The other aspect of it is, it's just authoritarian. As soon as you declare that this is the type of thing that needs to happen, that needs to occur in terms of identity and belonging and community, and particularly
hmm.
because it is universal, that there's enough of them that it encompasses. So, like, the revolutionary subject has to be a global subject, it has to be enormous. As soon as you expect that this is the thing that must occur, and if you
Hmm.
attempt to agitate it towards it, and if you become successful in doing so, then you're suppressing an awful lot of grievances, an awful lot of issues that will arise naturally between people. As soon as you put a community in a pot with a lid, it'll begin to boil and spit and fight, and it'll want something. It'll want something different. It'll start fighting with
Hmm.
itself. Um, so, um, so in reading their take on it, you're like, oh God, well, we got to chuck that idea. But since you've got the likes of Doug Lain and Slavoj Žižek, go, no, hang on, you know, let's let's consider the possibility of the universal subject.
Hmm.
So I think, so that tension within what exists on the left in leftist discourse today is an interesting one to pick apart. And
Hmm.
And my hunch is that the two positions aren't entirely divorced from each other. I think where people tend to be at today, um, plurality is something that they value. That even if they didn't value, I don't believe many on the left. I mean, you'd probably just end up being on the far right if you didn't value plurality today. Apologies if anyone out there happens to have to take some flack off some Egypt who says they're on the left and they're not into plurality. Not not of my community. Um, the yeah. So I don't think the position. It's probably not quite semantic, but it's probably in the phrasing where the actual difference is, and not necessarily in the substance.
Mm-hmm. And
Go on.
I guess with regards to Mouffe, specifically regarding her views on, you know, taking into account the, as you mentioned, this plurality of I guess burgoing identities, new. I can't remember the exact term that she uses for this. It's new subject positions, sort of in society in general, but also existing. We can actually also say isolated over on the left as well. I'm wondering. I guess my first point is more of a supposition of can can her sort of very plural, diverse framework for radical democracy contain within it a like can that sort of essentially outline, I guess, this a universal subject while also encompassing the vast plurality within. So the you know, but I'm also wondering now after saying that, I guess that's kind of the question: is
Yeah,
how can the universal, how do we articulate the universal subject in such a way that it can maintain and allow for this plurality of various and numerous subject positions, um, so as not to, I guess, push against the autonomy and individuality that we want for this plurality, for the plurality and everybody in society, but at the same time finding a connective, I suppose, tissue that's general enough that allows for it to all be articulated under a universal subject.
I think that's the nuts and bolts of hegemony social strategy, as well as her books leading up to agonism, and then their two books on populism really sort of are at pains to describe how that's possible.